Hey guys, tonight we begin with something absolutely brutal. The world of Roman gladiators fighting in the Colosseum during its grand opening in 80 AD. You think modern combat sports are violent? The reality of gladiatorial combat was a blood-soaked nightmare where the average fighter lasted only 10 battles before dying horribly in front of cheering crowds who literally bet on which body part would be severed first. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 80 AD, and you're about to become Marcus Brutus Maximus. Not your real name, but the stage name assigned to you by the ludus that now owns your life. The good news? You're about to perform in the grand opening of the most famous arena in human history. The bad news? The Colosseum's inaugural games will last 100 consecutive days, featuring over 5,000 animal killings and hundreds of gladiator deaths for the entertainment of 50,000 screaming Romans who consider watching you die to be the ultimate form of weekend fun. But here's something that would shock most people. You weren't dragged kicking and screaming into gladiator training. You actually volunteered for this nightmare, which makes you either incredibly brave or spectacularly stupid, depending on your perspective. The harsh reality of first-century Roman life meant that for many people, gladiator school represented the best available option for survival, advancement, and potentially earning enough money to secure freedom. Your path to the arena began 6 months ago in the debt courts of Rome, where your family's failed farming operation and mounting tax obligations left you facing a choice between slavery, exile, or voluntary gladiator service. The legal system made the decision easy. Debtors who couldn't pay faced immediate enslavement with no hope of freedom, while gladiator volunteers retained legal status and could theoretically earn their liberty through successful arena performance. The recruiting agents who frequented the debt courts painted gladiator life in terms that sounded almost appealing to someone facing complete economic ruin. Daily meals, professional training, medical care, and the possibility of fame and fortune through arena success. What they didn't mention was that the average gladiator career lasted less than 2 years, with most fighters dying before completing 20 matches. The gladiator recruitment process revealed how Roman society had systematized the conversion of human desperation into public entertainment. The recruiters were skilled at identifying individuals whose circumstances made them willing to risk everything for a chance at financial security and social advancement. Desperate men signed contracts they couldn't read, agreeing to terms they didn't understand, binding themselves to a system designed to produce spectacular deaths for mass entertainment. Your first glimpse of the Colosseum under construction left you speechless with a mixture of awe and terror. The massive oval structure rose from the Roman landscape like a man-made mountain. Its 4-story facade decorated with marble statues and architectural details that demonstrated the enormous wealth that Emperor Vespasian was willing to invest in public entertainment. The building could accommodate 50,000 spectators, making it larger than most Roman cities, and requiring logistical coordination that rivaled military campaigns. But the most disturbing aspect of the Colosseum wasn't its size. It was the sophisticated engineering designed specifically for efficient killing. The arena floor could be flooded for naval battles featuring real ships and actual drowning prisoners. Mechanical lift systems could raise wild animals, condemned criminals, and elaborate stage sets from underground chambers. Trap doors allowed performers to disappear instantly, often into underground chambers filled with hungry predators. The underground levels, called the hypogeum, represented a complex network of tunnels, chambers, and mechanical systems that supported the arena's entertainment functions. Gladiators, animals, and stage props moved through the underground passages like pieces in a deadly board game, emerging into the arena according to scripts designed to maximize crowd excitement and guarantee spectacular violence. Your assignment to the Ludus Magnus, the largest gladiator training school in Rome, brought immediate confrontation with the realities of professional combat preparation. The Ludus wasn't just a school, it was a combination military base, prison, and entertainment business designed to transform ordinary men into skilled killers who could provide compelling arena performances before dying in entertaining ways. The Ludus hierarchy reflected Roman society's obsession with social status and military organization. At the top sat the lanista, the owner-manager who treated gladiators as expensive livestock requiring careful management to maximize profit potential. Below him were the trainers, retired gladiators whose survival of extended arena careers made them invaluable instructors in combat techniques and survival strategies. The gladiators themselves occupied various positions based on experience, survival record, and entertainment value. Veterans who had survived multiple arena seasons enjoyed better food, private sleeping quarters, and the respect that came with proven ability to kill opponents while entertaining crowds. Newer fighters like yourself occupied the bottom tier, receiving basic sustenance and training while proving whether you possessed the skills and temperament necessary for arena success. Your initial medical examination revealed how gladiator schools evaluated human resources according to combat potential rather than general health considerations. The examining physician assessed your muscle development, joint flexibility, reaction time, and pain tolerance with the clinical detachment of someone evaluating livestock for breeding purposes. Your body was measured, weighed, and tested to determine which gladiator category would best utilize your physical characteristics. The gladiator classification system represented centuries of experimentation with different combat styles, weapon combinations, and entertainment formats designed to provide variety and excitement for audiences who demanded increasingly spectacular violence. Each gladiator type required specialized training, equipment, and tactical approaches that maximize both survival prospects and crowd appeal. Your physical assessment determined assignment to the murmillo category, gladiators who fought with traditional sword and shield combinations while wearing distinctive helmets decorated with fish motifs. Murmillones were typically matched against retiari, net fighters, or other sword-based opponents in contests that emphasized skill, strategy, and dramatic combat techniques rather than pure brutality. The murmillo equipment included a gladius, short sword, a large rectangular shield, armor covering your sword arm and left leg, and a helmet with limited vision slits that made peripheral awareness crucial for survival. The equipment was both protection and handicap. It provided defense against opponents' weapons while restricting mobility and vision in ways that made combat more challenging and entertaining for spectators. Your first day of gladiator training began with a sobering lecture about mortality statistics that the recruiting agents had conveniently omitted from their sales presentations. The training master, a scarred veteran named Loomis who had survived 43 arena matches, provided data that made your career prospects crystal clear. Gladiator combat isn't warfare, Loomis explained while gesturing toward practice weapons that were deliberately heavier than actual combat equipment. War aims to kill enemies efficiently. Arena combat aims to entertain crowds through skilled violence that demonstrates courage, technique, and dramatic flair. You're not soldiers, you're performers whose job is to create compelling entertainment before dying in ways that satisfy audience expectations. The training statistics were even more disturbing than the philosophical framework. Of every 20 men who entered gladiator training, only 12 would survive their first year of arena combat. Of those 12 survivors, only 4 would live through their second year. The few gladiators who achieved veteran status typically did so by developing exceptional skills combined with the kind of luck that couldn't be taught or learned through practice. But here's where the statistics became really interesting. Gladiator mortality rates varied dramatically based on combat category, opponent matchups, and the political significance of particular games. Routine gladiator matches during regular festival days had mortality rates around 15% per fight. Special events like imperial celebrations or triumph ceremonies could have mortality rates exceeding 50%, as organizers prioritized spectacular violence over gladiator survival. The Colosseum's inaugural games represented the most dangerous possible assignment for any gladiator. Emperor Titus was determined to surpass all previous entertainment spectacles, which meant that survival considerations would be subordinated to crowd excitement and imperial prestige. Gladiators selected for the opening ceremonies were essentially being chosen for elaborate public executions disguised as sporting events. Your daily training routine began before dawn, with physical conditioning that exceeded the demands of military service. Gladiator combat required cardiovascular endurance for prolonged fighting, explosive strength for weapon techniques, and flexibility for defensive maneuvers, all while wearing armor and carrying equipment that restricted natural movement patterns. The conditioning exercises included running with full equipment, climbing rope systems, and lifting weights made from stone blocks carved specifically for gladiator training. The physical demands were designed to push trainees beyond normal human limits, while identifying those who lacked the physical capabilities necessary for arena survival. But physical training represented only one component of gladiator preparation. Combat technique instruction consumed most of each training day, with individual weapon specialization requiring thousands of hours of practice to achieve minimum competency standards. Swordwork alone involved learning dozens of attack patterns, defensive positions, and combination techniques that could mean the difference between victory and death in arena combat. Your Murmillo training focused on the tactical use of sword and shield combinations against various opponent types. The Gladius required techniques completely different from civilian weapons or military swords. It was designed for close-quarters combat in confined spaces where agility and precision mattered more than raw strength or reach advantages. The shield work proved even more complex than sword techniques. The scutum wasn't just defensive equipment, but an offensive weapon that could be used for striking, pushing, and controlling opponent positioning. Effective shield use required upper body strength, timing, and spatial awareness that took months to develop through repetitive drill exercises. The helmet presented unique challenges that civilian combat never addressed. The limited vision slits reduced peripheral awareness, while the weight distribution affected balance and neck mobility. Learning to fight effectively while wearing gladiator helmets required developing heightened hearing, spatial intuition, and combat reflexes that compensated for restricted visual input. Your first sparring sessions revealed how little your civilian background had prepared you for professional combat training. Agricultural work had developed general physical strength, but gladiator fighting required specialized muscle development, reflexes, and mental toughness that could only be acquired through systematic combat preparation. The wooden practice weapons used for training were deliberately heavier than actual combat equipment to build strength and endurance while reducing injury risks during learning phases. Trainees fought with blunted wooden swords and padded shields until they demonstrated basic competency, then progressed to metal weapons under controlled conditions with extensive safety precautions. But even training combat with safety measures resulted in regular injuries that demonstrated how dangerous actual arena fighting would become. Broken bones, concussions, and severe cuts occurred frequently enough to require a full-time medical staff specializing in combat trauma treatment. The training injuries provided sobering previews of what arena combat would inflict on human bodies. The medical care available to gladiators represented the most advanced trauma treatment in the ancient world, primarily because gladiators represented valuable investments requiring protection and maintenance. gladiator physicians developed surgical techniques, pharmaceutical preparations, and rehabilitation methods that exceeded what was available to ordinary Roman citizens. Your training diet reflected the same investment philosophy that governed medical care. Gladiators received nutrition calculated to optimize physical performance and recovery, rather than simply preventing starvation. The diet included substantial quantities of meat, fresh vegetables, and specialized foods believed to enhance strength and endurance. But the superior food and medical care came with the understanding that gladiators were valuable property being maintained for profitable use rather than human beings deserving care for humanitarian reasons. The investments in gladiator welfare were calculated to maximize arena performance and entertainment value rather than to improve quality of life for its own sake. The psychological preparation for arena combat proved more challenging than physical training or technical skill development. Combat sports require mental toughness that allows effective performance despite fear, pain, and the immediate possibility of death. Gladiator training included psychological conditioning designed to overcome natural human reluctance to engage in potentially lethal violence. The conditioning methods included desensitization to violence through repeated exposure to injury and death, mental exercises for maintaining focus during combat stress, and philosophical frameworks for accepting death as a professional inevitability rather than a tragedy to be avoided. Trainees learn to view arena combat as a performance art requiring technical excellence rather than a survival situation requiring desperate measures. But the most important psychological preparation involved learning to read crowd reactions and respond to audience expectations during combat. Gladiator matches weren't just fights, they were theatrical performances where entertainment value mattered as much as victory. Successful gladiators learned to incorporate dramatic gestures, crowd interaction, and emotional appeals into their combat techniques. Your first month of training concluded with a sobering realization about what lay ahead during the Colosseum's opening ceremonies. The inaugural games would feature not just routine gladiator matches, but elaborate spectacles designed to demonstrate Roman power and imperial generosity through unprecedented displays of violence and exotic entertainment. The opening day alone would include exotic animal hunts featuring creatures from across the Roman Empire, mass executions of condemned criminals using creative methods designed for crowd entertainment, and gladiator matches featuring the most skilled and expensive fighters available. The 100-day festival would consume more human and animal lives than most military campaigns while serving no purpose except public amusement. Your role in these festivities would be determined by your training performance and the entertainment requirements of specific ceremony segments. Successful trainees might be assigned to featured matches with opportunities for glory and potential freedom. Less successful trainees would likely be assigned to mass combat events where individual survival was less important than overall spectacle. The economics of gladiator entertainment revealed how Roman society had created entire industries based on systematic violence and human sacrifice disguised as sports and cultural events. The costs of mounting major gladiator games exceeded the budgets of most provincial governments, yet emperors and wealthy citizens competed to sponsor increasingly elaborate and expensive spectacles. Individual gladiators represented substantial financial investments that could exceed the cost of luxury real estate or fine artwork. Top-tier gladiators who survived multiple arena seasons could command appearance fees equivalent to annual salaries for skilled professionals, making successful gladiators among the highest-paid entertainers in the Roman world. But the high earnings potential came with mortality rates that made gladiator careers extremely brief for most participants. The financial rewards were designed to attract recruits despite obvious dangers rather than to provide sustainable long-term career opportunities. Most gladiators died before earning enough to purchase their freedom or establish post-arena security. Your second month of training brought advanced combat instruction focusing on specific opponent matchups and tactical scenarios likely to occur during actual arena events. The training became more realistic and dangerous as instructors prepared you for combat situations where mistakes would be fatal rather than educational. The advanced training included practice matches against different gladiator types using real weapons under controlled conditions. These matches provided essential experience with actual combat dynamics while maintaining safety measures that prevented unnecessary casualties during training phases. Your performance during advanced training would determine your assignment level for the Colosseum opening ceremonies. Outstanding trainees might be selected for featured matches with opportunities for recognition and potential career advancement. Average performers would likely be assigned to standard matches with routine survival prospects. Poor performers faced assignment to mass combat events or animal fights where individual skill mattered less than willingness to die entertainingly. The selection process for opening ceremony assignments revealed how gladiator schools balanced entertainment requirements against investment protection. Valuable gladiators with proven crowd appeal received assignments that maximized their survival prospects while providing exciting entertainment. Expendable gladiators received assignments that prioritized spectacle over survival. As your training approached completion and the Colosseum's opening ceremonies drew near, you began to understand that you weren't just preparing for combat, you were preparing for a form of theatrical performance where the stakes were life and death. The audience expected spectacular violence, and success was measured by your ability to kill opponents while entertaining crowds who viewed your potential death as the ultimate form of amusement. The realization that your life had become entertainment for people who would never face similar risks created psychological conflicts that no amount of training could resolve. You were simultaneously a skilled performer, a valuable investment, and an expendable resource whose death would be celebrated by strangers who had paid admission to watch you die. But there was no turning back. The contracts had been signed, the training completed, and the opening ceremony scheduled. In just days, you would enter the Colosseum arena for the first time, facing opponents who were equally skilled, equally desperate, and equally aware that their survival depended on your death. The crowds would cheer, the emperor would render judgment, and you would discover whether months of preparation had equipped you to survive in the most dangerous entertainment venue in human history. Welcome to Gladiator life, where death is the only retirement plan and entertainment value matters more than human survival. The training areas include a full-scale replica of the Colosseum arena floor, complete with sand surfaces, elevation changes, and obstacles that will be present during actual combat. Trainees learn to fight on the same surface conditions they'll encounter during arena performances, developing familiarity with how sand affects footing, movement, and weapon techniques. Loomis, your primary combat instructor, conducts the daily training briefing with the professional competence of someone who understands that inadequate preparation leads to deaths that reflect poorly on the Ludus reputation. His scarred face and missing fingers provide constant reminders of what happens to gladiators who make mistakes during actual combat, while his survival of 43 arena matches demonstrates the effectiveness of proper training. Today you learn why gladiator combat is the most demanding physical activity in the civilized world, Loomis announces, consulting wax tablets that detail individualized training requirements for each gladiator category. Arena fighting requires cardiovascular endurance for extended combat, explosive strength for weapon techniques, flexibility for defensive movements, and pain tolerance that allows effective performance despite serious injuries. The training regimen for Mamillo gladiators focuses on sword and shield coordination that must become instinctive rather than conscious. Combat situations don't allow time for thinking about technique. Responses must be automatic reactions developed through thousands of repetitions of basic movement patterns. Your morning weapons training begins with wooden practice swords that weigh twice as much as actual combat gladi, forcing muscle development while reducing injury risks during learning phases. The practice weapons are shaped identically to real swords, but constructed from dense hardwood that creates the proper weight distribution while preventing accidental cuts during intensive drilling. The sword techniques you're learning bear little resemblance to military combat or civilian self-defense. Gladiator fighting emphasizes dramatic movements, technical skill demonstration, and entertainment value rather than efficient killing. Each attack must be delivered with precision and flair that showcases training and courage while providing visual excitement for arena audiences. The basic gladius attacks include overhead strikes designed to break through shield defenses, lateral cuts that target opponent limbs and torso, and thrusting attacks that can penetrate armor at specific vulnerable points. Each attack requires precise footwork, body positioning, and timing that must be coordinated with shield movements and defensive preparations. Your first attempts at coordinated sword and shield combat reveal how much skill is required to use gladiator equipment effectively. The scutum shield weighs nearly 20 pounds and must be maneuvered with precise timing to provide protection while creating offensive opportunities. The gladius requires strength and technique completely different from agricultural tools or civilian weapons. The wooden training weapons become unbearably heavy during extended practice sessions that last for hours without rest breaks. Your arms develop muscle fatigue that makes accurate weapon control nearly impossible, but the training continues regardless of individual exhaustion levels. Gladiator combat doesn't accommodate fatigue, so training must prepare fighters to perform effectively despite complete physical depletion. The shield techniques prove even more demanding than sword work, requiring upper body strength that exceeds normal human development. The scutum must be held in fighting position for extended periods, while being used for blocking, striking, and opponent control. The physical demands create muscle development that changes body proportions and creates chronic pain in shoulders and arms. Advanced shield techniques include using the shield's edge as a striking weapon, coordinating shield movements with sword attacks, and maintaining defensive positions while moving across uneven terrain. The shield can be used to blind opponents, create openings for attacks, and control combat distance in ways that maximize survival prospects. Your training partner for weapons instruction is Gaius, a veteran trainee who has survived 6 months of gladiator preparation and will fight in his first arena match during the Colosseum opening ceremonies. His experience provides insights into training techniques, while his nervousness about approaching arena combat demonstrates the psychological pressures that affect all gladiators. Gaius has developed the physical characteristics that mark experienced gladiator trainees. Overdeveloped shoulder and arm muscles from shield work, scarred hands from weapons training, and the 1,000-yard stare that comes from daily confrontation with mortality. His survival of extended training makes him a valuable partner for learning advanced techniques. The partnership system used for weapons training creates relationships that are simultaneously supportive and competitive. Training partners must cooperate to develop mutual skills, while understanding that successful arena careers require defeating opponents who may include former training partners. The psychological complexity creates emotional conflicts that add to the stress of physical preparation. Your weapons training sessions typically last for 4 hours without breaks, pushing both partners beyond normal endurance limits while maintaining technical precision requirements. The combination of physical exhaustion and skill demands creates training conditions that simulate the stress of actual arena combat while developing automatic responses necessary for survival. Midday training focuses on specialized techniques for fighting against different gladiator types, with particular emphasis on combat against retiarii, whose net and trident combinations present unique tactical challenges for sword and shield fighters. The training includes learning to recognize attack patterns, exploit opponent weaknesses, and maintain effective distance control. Retiarius combat training involves practicing against instructors who use actual nets and tridents to simulate realistic threat levels. The net fighting is particularly dangerous because entanglement can be fatal if the murmillo cannot escape quickly enough to avoid trident attacks. Learning to cut free from nets while maintaining shield protection requires coordination that takes months to develop. The trident presents different challenges than sword-based weapons, with greater reach and multiple striking points that can attack different target areas simultaneously. Defending against trident attacks requires shield techniques that differ significantly from sword defense, with particular attention to preventing the weapon from hooking the shield and creating leverage advantages for the retiarius. Your first practice matches against experienced retiarius trainees demonstrate how little your sword and shield skills mean against opponents using completely different weapons and tactics. The net attacks create confusion and panic that interfere with trained responses, while the trident's reach prevents close combat where gladius techniques are most effective. The learning process is accelerated through repeated defeats and injuries that teach lessons more effectively than theoretical instruction. Each practice match reveals specific weaknesses in your technique while demonstrating tactics that increase survival prospects. The education is painful but essential for developing combat instincts. Afternoon training shifts focus to physical conditioning that develops strength, endurance, and flexibility necessary for arena combat while wearing full armor and equipment. The conditioning exercises are designed to push trainees beyond normal human limits while preparing bodies for the extreme demands of gladiator fighting. The strength training includes lifting stone blocks carved specifically for gladiator conditioning, carrying heavy equipment across obstacle courses, and wrestling exercises that develop grappling skills useful for close combat situations. The strength requirements exceed what most men can achieve through normal physical labor, necessitating specialized conditioning that creates visible changes in body structure. Endurance training involves running in full armor and equipment for distances that test cardiovascular capacity under combat load conditions. The running takes place on sandy surfaces that simulate arena conditions while requiring greater effort than normal ground surfaces. The endurance demands must be met while maintaining weapon readiness and protective equipment positioning. Flexibility training focuses on maintaining combat mobility despite heavy armor and equipment restrictions. The exercises include stretching routines, agility drills, and movement patterns that keep joints functional under the stress of repetitive combat motions. Flexibility maintenance becomes increasingly important as training injuries accumulate and create movement limitations. But the most brutal aspect of afternoon conditioning is pain tolerance training that prepares gladiators for continuing effective combat despite serious injuries that would disable ordinary people. The training includes controlled exposure to impacts, cuts, and joint stress that builds tolerance for the pain levels experienced during arena combat. Your first pain tolerance session involves receiving controlled strikes from wooden weapons while maintaining combat techniques and reactions. The strikes are delivered with sufficient force to cause genuine pain and minor injuries while avoiding damage that would prevent continued training. The experience teaches that combat must continue despite pain levels that would normally cause incapacitation. The pain tolerance conditioning escalates gradually over weeks and months as trainees develop higher thresholds for discomfort and learn to maintain effective performance despite injuries that would end fights for untrained individuals. The conditioning creates psychological changes that affect how gladiators respond to pain and injury throughout their lives. Evening training concludes with tactical instruction that teaches combat strategy, opponent analysis, and crowd management techniques that affect survival prospects during arena performances. The tactical training addresses aspects of gladiator combat that extend beyond physical skills to include psychological warfare and entertainment management. Combat strategy instruction covers different approaches for various opponent matchups, including when to fight aggressively, when to employ defensive tactics, and how to create dramatic moments that satisfy audience expectations while maximizing survival prospects. The strategic knowledge can mean the difference between victory and death when physical skills are evenly matched. Opponent analysis teaches gladiators to quickly assess enemy strengths, weaknesses, and tactical preferences during the brief periods available before combat begins. The analysis must be completed within seconds of entering the arena while dealing with crowd noise, environmental distractions, and performance anxiety that interfere with clear thinking. Crowd management represents perhaps the most complex aspect of gladiator performance, requiring fighters to simultaneously focus on combat survival while monitoring audience reactions and adjusting performance accordingly. Crowds can influence fight outcomes through their reactions, making audience management a survival skill rather than just entertainment technique. Your tactical instruction includes learning to recognize crowd preferences, respond to audience reactions, and incorporate dramatic elements into combat techniques without compromising fighting effectiveness. The performance aspects of gladiator combat require skills that have nothing to do with weapons training, but which significantly affect survival prospects. The medical care provided to gladiator trainees reflects the same investment philosophy that governs food and equipment provision. Trainees receive immediate treatment for training injuries to prevent minor problems from becoming career-ending disabilities, but the medical care prioritizes return to training over long-term health considerations. Your training injuries accumulate weekly despite safety precautions and medical attention. Bruises, cuts, muscle strains, and joint injuries become constant companions that affect training performance and daily comfort levels. The injuries are treated sufficiently to allow continued training, but not adequately enough to achieve complete healing. The medical staff includes physicians who specialize in combat trauma and have developed surgical techniques, pharmaceutical preparations, and rehabilitation methods specifically for gladiator injuries. Their expertise exceeds what's available to ordinary Roman citizens, but their primary concern is maintaining training schedules rather than optimizing long-term health. More serious training injuries require extended medical treatment that removes trainees from active instruction while maintaining their value as gladiator investments. Broken bones, concussions, and severe cuts receive comprehensive care designed to restore combat capability as quickly as possible, regardless of long-term consequences. Your second serious training injury occurs during advanced combat instruction when a practice sword slips and creates a deep cut across your ribs that requires immediate surgical attention. The wound is cleaned with wine, stitched with animal gut thread, and treated with honey-based compounds that prevent infection while promoting rapid healing. The recovery period from surgical treatment provides opportunity to observe gladiator training from the perspective of injured fighters who understand they're temporarily worthless to the Ludus investment portfolio. Injured gladiators receive reduced food rations and minimal attention, while their value as entertainment assets remains uncertain. But recovery periods also provide time for mental preparation and strategic thinking that active training schedules don't accommodate. Injured gladiators study other fighters' techniques, analyze combat strategies, and develop psychological approaches for managing arena performance stress. Your recovery observations reveal aspects of gladiator training that aren't visible to participants focused on survival and skill development. The systematic nature of the conditioning becomes apparent when viewed from outside the daily routine, showing how each component contributes to creating fighters capable of entertaining audiences through skilled violence. The training program operates according to principles developed through decades of experimentation with different preparation methods, combat techniques, and psychological conditioning approaches. The current system represents the most effective known method for creating gladiators who can provide compelling entertainment while surviving long enough to justify investment costs. But the system's effectiveness is measured by entertainment value and investment return rather than human welfare or long-term health considerations. Successful gladiator training produces fighters who can kill opponents entertainingly while accepting their own deaths gracefully, priorities that create moral conflicts for anyone who considers the human costs involved. Your return to active training after injury recovery brings advanced combat instruction that focuses on specific techniques for Colosseum arena conditions. The Colosseum's unique features, including trapdoors, mechanical lifts, and variable surface conditions, require specialized preparation that differs from standard arena training. The Colosseum training includes practice with the mechanical systems that can suddenly change arena conditions during combat. Gladiators must learn to adapt quickly to trapdoors opening beneath their feet, lifts raising obstacles or opponents, and surface changes that affect footing and movement patterns. Advanced Colosseum preparation also includes training for special events like naval battles, where the arena is flooded and combat takes place on ships with actual drowning risks. The naval combat training involves learning to fight while managing waterlogged equipment, unstable footing, and the additional hazard of drowning if knocked overboard. Your final month of training concludes with full contact practice matches using real weapons under conditions that closely simulate actual arena combat. These practice matches have mortality rates nearly as high as arena fighting, serving as final preparation and elimination of trainees who lack the skills necessary for Colosseum performance. The practice matches are observed by ludus administrators, Colosseum officials, and wealthy patrons who bet on training outcomes while evaluating gladiators for upcoming arena assignments. Your performance during these evaluations determines whether you'll receive featured match assignments with survival opportunities or expendable assignments designed primarily for spectacular entertainment. As your training period approaches completion and your first Colosseum appearance becomes imminent, you begin to understand that months of preparation have equipped you with skills that will either save your life or make your death more entertaining for audiences who view gladiator mortality as acceptable entertainment costs. The training has changed your body, mind, and fundamental attitudes about violence, death, and human value in ways that will affect you permanently, regardless of how long you survive arena combat. You've become something different from the desperate debtor who entered gladiator school. You're now a professional killer, trained to entertain crowds through spectacular violence. But whether your transformation will prove sufficient for Colosseum survival remains to be determined through actual combat against opponents who have received identical training and share identical motivations for staying alive long enough to earn freedom from the arena system that owns their lives. Tomorrow, you'll discover whether months of brutal preparation have equipped you to survive in the most dangerous entertainment venue in human history, or whether you'll become another casualty whose death serves no purpose except crowd amusement and betting entertainment for Roman citizens who have never faced similar risks. The morning of your first Colosseum appearance begins with the sound that will define the rest of your life. 50,000 Romans screaming for blood before the sun has fully risen over the 7 hills of Rome. The roar from the arena penetrates the thick stone walls of your underground holding cell, where 24 gladiators await their turn to provide entertainment through spectacular violence or entertaining deaths. Your pre-combat meal consists of honeyed wine designed to calm nerves, barley bread for energy, and a mixture of herbs that gladiator physicians claim will slow bleeding from combat wounds. The food tastes like sawdust because your mouth has gone completely dry with terror, but you force yourself to eat because fainting from hunger during your first arena appearance would result in immediate death and posthumous ridicule. But here's something that would shock modern audiences. Gladiator combat wasn't actually intended to be a death sentence for every participant. The economics of gladiator entertainment required preserving valuable fighters who represented substantial financial investments, so most routine matches were designed to showcase skill and courage rather than guarantee mortality. However, the Colosseum's opening ceremonies operated under different rules, where imperial prestige demanded spectacular casualties regardless of economic considerations. The mortality statistics for opening ceremony gladiators were deliberately kept secret to prevent recruitment problems, but surviving records suggest that 70% of fighters assigned to inaugural games died during their arena appearances. Your chances of surviving the day were roughly equivalent to surviving a major military battle, except that soldiers fought for strategic objectives while gladiators died purely for entertainment value. Your combat assignment for the morning session pairs you against Titus Flavius Maximus, a veteran gladiator who has survived 14 arena matches and possesses technical skills that exceed anything you encountered during training. The matchup isn't coincidental. Experienced gladiators are typically paired against newcomers during major spectacles to ensure that at least one fighter demonstrates the skill levels that justify gladiator entertainment costs. The pairing system for gladiator matches operates according to principles designed to maximize entertainment value while managing mortality rates according to event requirements. Routine festival matches might pair fighters of similar experience levels to create competitive contests with uncertain outcomes. Special events like imperial celebrations prioritize dramatic spectacle over competitive balance, often creating matchups where survival depends more on luck and crowd favor than fighting ability. Your opponent's record includes victories over opponents using every major gladiator weapon type, demonstrating versatility and adaptability that represent years of arena experience. His survival of 14 matches places him in the top 5% of gladiator longevity statistics, making him exactly the kind of skilled veteran that crowds expect to see during major celebrations. But experienced gladiators carry their own vulnerabilities that training partners and observers learn to recognize. Titus Flavius Maximus shows signs of accumulated combat trauma, including a slight limp from an old leg wound, reduced peripheral vision from scar tissue around his left eye, and hand tremors that suggest nerve damage from previous injuries. These weaknesses provide potential advantages if you can survive long enough to exploit them. The pre-combat preparation ritual includes prayers to various gods who supposedly protect gladiators, though the statistical evidence suggests divine intervention operates selectively at best. You offer prayers to Mars for strength, Fortuna for luck, and Nemesis for justice, while privately acknowledging that your survival depends more on training and tactics than supernatural assistance. The equipment inspection reveals how gladiator gear differs from training weapons in ways designed to increase injury likelihood while maintaining combat effectiveness. Your actual combat gladius weighs significantly less than practice weapons, allowing faster attacks but reducing the muscle memory developed through months of training with heavier equipment. The combat scutum provides less protection than training shields, with thinner construction and smaller dimensions that create vulnerabilities not present during practice sessions. Your armor includes gaps and joints that training equipment minimized, creating target areas that experienced opponents know how to exploit during actual combat. But the most disturbing equipment difference involves the helmet design that restricts vision and hearing more than practice gear, while adding weight that affects balance and mobility. The combat helmet transforms familiar movements into awkward struggles while creating blind spots that opponents can use for surprise attacks. Your final equipment check includes testing weapon balance, shield security, and armor mobility while managing the psychological pressure of knowing that equipment failures during combat would result in immediate death. The gear feels foreign despite months of training because actual combat equipment prioritizes appearance and crowd appeal over fighter safety. The underground staging area beneath the Colosseum reveals the sophisticated infrastructure required to support mass entertainment through systematic violence. The Hypogeum contains specialized chambers for different types of performers, mechanical systems for lifting combatants and animals to arena level, and storage areas for equipment, corpses, and wounded fighters who survived their performances. The holding cells for gladiators feature stone walls covered with graffiti left by previous fighters, including victory records, farewell messages to families, and crude drawings depicting arena combat scenarios. Reading the wall inscriptions provides glimpse into the psychology of men facing probable death for public entertainment, revealing everything from defiant bravado to desperate fear. One inscription reads, "Flamma fought here 34 times and survived to earn freedom," representing the kind of exceptional career that gives hope to newcomers, while ignoring the hundreds of gladiators whose names appear only once before disappearing from historical records. The survival stories receive attention, while the mortality statistics remain carefully unmentioned. Another wall carving states, "Died bravely for crowd amusement, served no useful purpose," suggesting that some gladiators developed philosophical perspectives about their roles in Roman entertainment systems. The inscription implies criticism of gladiator games while acknowledging the personal powerlessness to change circumstances beyond individual control. The mechanical lift system that raises gladiators from underground staging areas to arena level operates through counterweight and pulley mechanisms that represent sophisticated engineering applied to mass entertainment production. The lifts can raise multiple fighters simultaneously while coordinating their arena entrances, according to carefully scripted timing designed to maximize crowd excitement. Your first ride on the Gladiator lift provides terrifying preview of the arena environment that no amount of training could adequately prepare you to face. The mechanical groaning and chains rattling create ominous soundtrack as you rise toward arena level, while the growing intensity of crowd noise indicates the scale of audience waiting to witness your performance. The lift emerges through trap doors in the arena floor, with dramatic timing calculated to surprise and delight audiences who enjoy the theatrical elements of gladiator entertainment as much as the combat itself. Your emergence into sunlight after weeks of underground preparation creates momentary blindness that leaves you vulnerable during the crucial first moments of arena exposure. The Colosseum arena floor extends before you like a vast stage designed specifically for human drama played out through lethal violence. The sand surface stretches approximately 280 feet long by 180 feet wide, providing sufficient space for elaborate combat scenarios while ensuring that audience members have clear sightlines to all action, regardless of seating location. But the arena floor contains features not present in training facilities that create additional hazards during actual combat. Hidden trapdoors can open without warning to release wild animals or create sudden obstacles that change combat dynamics. Mechanical devices beneath the sand can raise barriers, weapons, or stage props that alter fighting conditions according to scripts designed to enhance entertainment value. The sand surface itself represents calculated choice designed to absorb blood while providing adequate footing for combat maneuvers. The sand depth varies across different arena areas, creating zones where movement is easier or more difficult depending on tactical requirements of specific entertainment segments. Your first full view of the Colosseum audience reveals the true scale of gladiator entertainment and the enormous number of people whose amusement depends on your death or survival. 50,000 Romans fill the tiered seating that rises in 4 distinct levels, each representing different social classes with varying proximity to arena action based on political status and wealth. The Emperor Titus occupies the imperial box, positioned for optimal viewing while providing maximum visibility for crowd management through imperial gestures that can influence combat outcomes. The Emperor's presence transforms routine gladiator matches into political events where performance quality reflects on imperial competence and generosity. The senatorial class occupies premium seating closest to arena action, allowing detailed observation of combat techniques while providing opportunities to demonstrate their sophistication through knowledgeable commentary about gladiator skills and tactics. Their proximity to violence serves as entertainment while reinforcing their social status through privileged access to exclusive spectacles. The equestrian class and wealthy citizens fill middle-tier seating that provides good sight lines while maintaining appropriate social distance from both the imperial party and the common citizens whose enthusiasm often exceeds their understanding of combat nuances. Their betting on combat outcomes adds financial excitement to entertainment consumption. The common citizens, including women and slaves, occupy upper-tier seating where individual combat details become difficult to distinguish, but where crowd energy reaches maximum intensity through mass participation in cheering, betting, and emotional investment in gladiator performances. Their collective voice influences arena atmosphere and can affect combat outcomes through expressions of approval or disapproval. The crowd noise when you first appear in the arena exceeds anything you experienced during training or imagined during preparation. 50,000 people screaming, cheering, booing, and shouting creates acoustic assault that interferes with hearing, balance, and concentration while adding psychological pressure that affects combat performance. But the crowd noise also provides tactical information about audience preferences and expectations that skilled gladiators learn to interpret and use for survival advantage. Crowd reactions indicate whether spectators favor aggressive combat, defensive tactics, or dramatic gestures that can influence imperial decisions about match outcomes. Your opponent, Titus Flavius Maximus, enters the arena with confidence that comes from surviving multiple combat encounters while understanding crowd management techniques that can improve survival prospects. His experience shows in his posture, movement patterns, and interaction with audience members who recognize his reputation and respond accordingly. The pre-combat ritual includes formal presentations to the emperor, weapon demonstrations for crowd inspection, and ceremonial gestures that acknowledge the entertainment contract between gladiators and audiences. The ritual serves multiple purposes, including allowing fighters to assess opponents, giving crowds opportunity to evaluate combat prospects, and providing imperial officials time to prepare for match management. The weapon inspection allows both gladiators and audience members to examine combat equipment while creating anticipation for the violence to follow. Your gladius receives crowd attention as spectators evaluate its condition, sharpness, and your apparent competence in handling the weapon that will determine your survival prospects. The crowd's reaction to your appearance provides immediate feedback about their expectations and preferences for your performance. Cheers indicate approval and support that can influence imperial decisions, while boos suggest that spectacular defeat might satisfy audience bloodlust more than successful combat performance. But the most important crowd response involves their reaction to your opponent, whose veteran status and survival record create expectations for skilled combat demonstration, regardless of match outcome. The crowd expects Titus Flavius Maximus to provide entertainment value through superior technique, even if he doesn't survive the encounter. The imperial signal to begin combat comes through traditional gesture that has launched thousands of gladiator matches while sending countless fighters to their deaths for no purpose beyond public amusement. Emperor Titus raises his hand, pauses for dramatic effect, then drops it to signal the start of violence that will end with death or maiming for at least one participant. Your first exchange of attacks with an experienced gladiator in actual combat conditions reveals how inadequate training preparation proves when facing opponents who have survived multiple arena encounters. Titus Flavius Maximus moves with economy and precision that conserves energy while probing for weaknesses in your defensive positions. His initial attacks focus on testing your reactions, weapon control, and tactical awareness rather than attempting immediate decisive strikes. The probing allows him to evaluate your skill level while managing his own energy expenditure for what might become extended combat, requiring sustained performance over time. Your defensive responses demonstrate months of training while revealing the limitations of practice sessions that couldn't simulate the psychological pressure of actual arena combat. Your shield work remains technically sound, but lacks the fluid adaptation that distinguishes experienced fighters from well-trained newcomers. Sweat accumulation inside your helmet creates vision problems that interfere with tracking opponent movements while making breathing more difficult during periods requiring maximum physical exertion. The equipment that provided protection also creates performance limitations that experienced opponents learn to exploit. Your second successful attack comes through desperation rather than technique, as fatigue and fear combine to create reckless aggression that happens to catch your opponent during equipment adjustment. The gladius thrust penetrates his thigh armor and creates serious wound that affects his mobility and changes combat dynamics. The crowd's response to serious injury escalates their excitement while providing both fighters with immediate feedback about audience satisfaction levels. Serious wounds create entertainment value that justifies gladiator entertainment costs while marking progression toward match conclusion through death or incapacitation. Blood loss from the thigh wound affects Titus Flavius Maximus's combat effectiveness while demonstrating why gladiator careers typically end through accumulated injuries rather than single decisive defeats. Multiple wounds reduce performance capabilities until survival becomes impossible, regardless of skill levels, but experienced gladiators possess tactical knowledge about fighting effectively, despite serious injuries, using crowd management and psychological warfare to maintain competitive advantages even when physical capabilities decline. His veteran status includes understanding of how to win arena matches through methods beyond pure combat skill. His response to serious injury includes appealing to crowd sympathy while positioning himself for defensive tactics that conserve energy and create opportunities for dramatic counterattacks that can reverse match momentum. The crowd management becomes as important as weapon techniques for survival prospects. Your tactical position improves significantly as your opponent's mobility decreases, but extended combat has also degraded your own performance capabilities through fatigue, minor injuries, and equipment problems that affect weapon control and defensive effectiveness. Both fighters face declining capabilities as match progression continues. the crowd begins showing preference for match conclusion as extended combat reaches points where entertainment value might decline. If neither fighter can provide decisive action, their reaction influences imperial decision-making about whether to allow natural match progression or intervene to ensure satisfactory entertainment conclusion. Emperor Titus begins paying closer attention to combat developments while preparing to make decisions about match outcome that will satisfy audience expectations while managing gladiator investment considerations. Imperial intervention can override combat results when entertainment requirements conflict with natural fight progression. Your final exchange with Titus Flavius Maximus occurs when fatigue and injuries reduce both fighters to desperate attempts at decisive action that will end combat before complete exhaustion makes entertaining conclusion impossible. The exchange represents climactic moment that determines survival for both participants. His final attack combines remaining strength with veteran technique in attempt to create mortal wound that ensures his survival while providing crowd satisfaction through dramatic combat conclusion. The attack represents his best remaining opportunity to avoid defeat by less experienced opponent. Your defensive response relies more on training reflexes than conscious decision-making, as exhaustion limits complex tactical thinking, while survival instincts drive automatic reactions developed through months of intensive preparation. The response determines whether training adequately prepared you for arena survival. The decisive moment arrives when equipment failure creates unexpected opportunity as your opponent's shield strap breaks during aggressive attack, leaving him momentarily vulnerable to counterattack that could determine match outcome. The equipment failure represents the kind of random factor that often determines gladiator survival regardless of skill differences. Your final attack penetrates beneath his armor and creates mortal wound that ensures your survival while ending his 14-match arena career through death that serves no purpose beyond crowd entertainment. The victory provides relief and horror as you realize survival required killing someone whose skills exceeded your own. The crowd's response to your victory includes both celebration and disappointment, as your survival means losing a veteran gladiator whose entertainment value justified years of investment and training. Your success represents both personal achievement and system loss that affects future gladiator entertainment quality. Emperor Titus signals approval of your performance while acknowledging the loss of experienced gladiator, whose death reduces available talent for future arena events. Imperial satisfaction with entertainment value outweighs concerns about gladiator mortality rates that affect long-term entertainment sustainability. Your first arena victory provides prize money equivalent to several years of ordinary Roman wages, while demonstrating that gladiator survival can produce financial rewards that exceed most available career opportunities. The monetary rewards explain why desperate people continue volunteering for gladiator service despite obvious mortality risks. But the victory also confirms that arena survival requires killing opponents who possess families, histories, and survival motivations identical to your own. The psychological impact of necessary killing for entertainment purposes creates moral conflicts that no amount of training or financial reward can resolve. The post-combat medical treatment includes immediate attention to injuries that could become infected or permanently disabling if not properly treated. Gladiator medical care represents the most advanced trauma treatment available in the ancient world, primarily because gladiators represent valuable investments requiring maintenance. Your combat injuries include multiple cuts, bruises, and muscle strains that will require days or weeks of recovery time before you can return to training or arena combat. The injury treatment prioritizes rapid healing over long-term health considerations, using techniques that restore combat capability as quickly as possible. The victory celebration includes recognition from Ludus administrators who view your success as validation of their training methods while calculating your increased value as proven arena performer. Successful gladiators receive better treatment and opportunities as their survival demonstrates investment potential. But the celebration also includes sobering reminder that first arena survival represents beginning rather than conclusion of gladiator career obligations. Contract requirements typically specify multiple arena appearances over extended periods, meaning that initial survival only delays rather than eliminates mortality risks. Your return to Gladiator Barracks includes reactions from fellow fighters who view your success with mixture of congratulation and envy, understanding that your survival came at cost of veteran gladiator whose death could have been avoided if match assignments had been different. The victory creates complex emotions among fellow performers. The evening meal following your first arena victory tastes better than any food you've eaten since entering gladiator training, partly because survival heightens appreciation for basic pleasures, and partly because successful gladiators receive improved rations as reward for proven entertainment value. But the improved treatment cannot eliminate awareness that arena survival represents temporary achievement rather than permanent security. Statistical analysis of gladiator careers shows that survival rates decline with each successive match as opponents become more skilled and crowd expectations increase for spectacular performances. Your first night's sleep after killing another human being for entertainment includes nightmares that will recur throughout whatever remains of your gladiator career. The psychological impact of necessary killing affects all arena survivors regardless of their practical acceptance of gladiator system requirements. Tomorrow will bring continued training for future arena appearances that contract obligations make inevitable. Each successive match will present opponents whose skills equal or exceed those of Titus Flavius Maximus, while crowd expectations increase for entertainment value that requires greater risks and more spectacular violence. The Colosseum opening ceremonies will continue for 99 more days, providing numerous opportunities for arena death that make your initial survival statistically insignificant when viewed against long-term career prospects. Your victory purchased temporary reprieve rather than permanent safety from system designed to produce entertaining deaths. But for tonight, you're alive when statistical probability suggested you would be dead, having demonstrated that months of brutal training produced skills sufficient for arena survival under optimal circumstances. Whether those skills will prove adequate for future challenges remains to be determined through successive encounters with opponents who survived their own initial arena tests. Welcome to gladiator life, where every victory is temporary, every survival creates obligations for future risk-taking, and death remains the only guaranteed retirement plan in entertainment industry built on systematic violence for mass amusement. Your return to the Ludus after your first arena victory brings immediate recognition that survival has fundamentally altered your position within the complex social hierarchy that governs gladiator society. The same men who ignored you during training now approach with mixture of respect, fear, and calculation as they recognize that proven arena survivors possess value that affects everyone's survival prospects within the gladiator system. But here's something that would surprise most people about gladiator culture. Successful arena fighters didn't automatically become leaders or gain significant privileges within Ludus society. The gladiator hierarchy operated according to principles that balanced combat success against factors like experience, political connections, entertainment value, and the peculiar economics of human investment that treated skilled fighters as valuable livestock requiring requiring careful management. The ludus social structure resembled a twisted version of military organization where rank reflected survival probability rather than leadership capability or moral authority. At the apex sat the few gladiators who had survived long enough to achieve veteran status, typically defined as completing at least 20 arena matches without suffering permanently disabling injuries that ended combat careers. These veterans, called primi palus or first spears, enjoyed privileges that included private sleeping quarters, superior food rations, and the kind of respect that comes from demonstrating exceptional ability to kill opponents while entertaining crowds. But veteran status also carried obligations that could prove more dangerous than regular arena combat, including training newer fighters and participating in special events designed to showcase elite gladiator skills. Your single arena victory places you in the second tier of ludus hierarchy, elevated above untested trainees, but still far below veterans whose survival records justify significant investment in their continued welfare. This intermediate status provides modest improvements in living conditions, while creating expectations for continued arena success that will determine whether you advance further or join the majority of gladiators who die before achieving meaningful status. The barracks assignment system reflects these social distinctions through housing arrangements that range from communal sleeping areas for new trainees to semi-private quarters for successful fighters to individual rooms for veterans whose value justifies investment in personal comfort and privacy. Your post-victory housing upgrade moves you from shared sleeping space with 12 other men to a smaller room accommodating only 6 gladiators. But the improved housing comes with uncomfortable realities about gladiator living conditions that no amount of success can completely eliminate. The barracks remain essentially prison facilities designed to contain valuable human property rather than provide comfortable accommodations for people deserving dignity and privacy. Even veteran gladiators live under constant supervision with restricted movement and limited personal autonomy. The sleeping arrangements in your new quarters include 3 sets of wooden bunks with straw mattresses that represent luxury compared to floor sleeping, but which still harbour insects, rodents, and the accumulated odours of men who rarely have opportunities for thorough washing. Privacy remains minimal as personal space extends only to your assigned sleeping area and small storage box for personal possessions. Your new roommates include Gaius Brutus, a veteran of 8 arena matches who has survived long enough to develop the psychological hardness that distinguishes successful gladiators from those who crack under pressure. His survival strategy involves maintaining emotional distance from other fighters while cultivating relationships that provide tactical advantages and survival information. Another roommate, Marcus Aurelius, not his real name but the stage identity assigned by ludus administrators, represents the increasing number of volunteers who entered gladiator service seeking fame and fortune rather than escaping desperate circumstances. His upper-class background provided education and social connections that create advantages in navigating ludus politics, while his voluntary status affects how other gladiators perceive his motivations. The third veteran roommate, Spartacus, again a stage name chosen for its crowd appeal, survived arena combat despite lacking exceptional physical skills through superior understanding of crowd psychology and entertainment techniques that compensate for combat limitations. His success demonstrates that gladiator careers depend on multiple factors beyond pure fighting ability. The evening conversations in your new quarters reveal aspects of gladiator life that training never addressed, including the complex relationships between fighters who must simultaneously cooperate for mutual survival while competing for resources, opportunities, and the imperial favor that can determine life or death outcomes. These relationships create psychological tensions that affect everyone's mental health and combat performance. Gaius Brutus explains the unwritten rules that govern gladiator interactions, including protocols for sharing information about opponents, tactics for managing ludus administrators, and strategies for maintaining psychological stability despite constant mortality risks. His guidance represents survival knowledge that can't be learned through combat training, but which significantly affects career longevity. Never trust anyone completely, Gaius advises while checking his equipment for tomorrow's training session. Every gladiator wants to survive, and survival sometimes requires decisions that hurt other people. Friendship is luxury that few gladiators can afford when their lives depend on killing opponents, who might include former training partners. Marcus Aurelius provides insights into the economic aspects of gladiator entertainment that affect individual fighter prospects and ludus operations. The gladiator business operates according to complex financial calculations that balance investment costs against entertainment revenues while managing mortality rates that affect long-term profitability. Successful gladiators generate revenue through multiple sources, Marcus explains, while counting prize money from his recent arena victory. Arena appearance fees, betting percentages, merchandise sales, and private exhibition bookings can create income streams that exceed what most Roman citizens earn through conventional careers. But the earning potential comes with mortality risks that make financial planning extremely difficult. The prize money system for gladiator victories reflects both the enormous costs of mounting arena spectacles and the entertainment value that successful fighters provide to audiences willing to pay premium prices for quality violence. Your first arena victory earned prize money equivalent to what skilled craftsmen might earn in 2 years of regular employment. But the prize distribution system includes deductions that significantly reduce actual payments to fighters while ensuring that ludus administrators receive compensation for training, equipment, medical care, and housing expenses. The financial arrangements treat gladiators as independent contractors responsible for business costs while working under conditions that resemble slavery more than entrepreneurship. Your actual take-home prize money after deductions amounts to roughly 6 months of ordinary wages, still substantial, but far less than the headline figures used to attract recruits and maintain public interest in gladiator careers. The financial reality demonstrates that gladiator success provides genuine economic opportunities while involving risks that make long-term wealth accumulation nearly impossible. Spartacus shares knowledge about the fan culture that surrounds successful gladiators, including the devoted followers who attend arena events specifically to support favorite fighters while creating celebrity status that can provide financial and political advantages for gladiators who understand how to cultivate public relationships. Popular gladiators receive gifts from admirers, invitations to private parties, and business opportunities that extend beyond arena combat, Spartacus explains, while showing off jewelry received from wealthy female fans. The celebrity status can provide security and income that compensate for career brevity, but maintaining public appeal requires understanding crowd psychology and entertainment techniques that have nothing to do with fighting skills. The fan relationships create psychological complications that affect gladiator mental health and combat performance. Female admirers often develop romantic attachments to fighters whose arena personas differ significantly from their actual personalities, creating relationships based on fantasy rather than genuine understanding of gladiator experiences and motivations. Male fans typically focus on combat technique and career statistics while developing loyalties that can influence arena outcomes through crowd reactions and betting patterns. Their support provides psychological benefits while creating pressure for continued spectacular performances that increase injury risks and mortality prospects. But the most disturbing aspect of gladiator celebrity involves the sexual exploitation that wealthy Romans consider acceptable entertainment complementing arena violence. Female gladiator fans frequently expect sexual access to favorite fighters as part of their patron relationship, while male admirers sometimes purchase private combat exhibitions that include sexual performances as part of the entertainment package. Your introduction to this aspect of gladiator life occurs when a wealthy Roman matron requests private meeting to discuss sponsorship opportunities that clearly involve expectations extending far beyond professional combat consultation. The request demonstrates how gladiator celebrity status creates vulnerability to exploitation that training never prepared you to handle. The sexual dynamics within Ludus society reflect broader Roman attitudes towards slavery, entertainment, and human value that treat gladiators as property available for various forms of consumption by people wealthy enough to afford access. These dynamics affect all gladiators, regardless of their combat success or celebrity status. Homosexual relationships between gladiators occur frequently due to restricted access to women, extended periods of isolation from normal social contact, and the emotional bonds that develop between men facing shared mortality risks. The relationships provide psychological comfort while creating additional complications in social environment where trust and emotional vulnerability can be exploited for tactical advantage. The Ludus administrators tolerate gladiator relationships that don't interfere with training or combat performance while prohibiting marriages or long-term commitments that might affect fighter motivation or loyalty to the gladiator system. Personal relationships must remain subordinate to business requirements that treat emotional attachments as potential threats to profitable entertainment production. Marcus Aurelius describes the economic calculations that determine individual gladiator value within the entertainment industry, including factors like combat record, crowd appeal, physical condition, and estimated remaining career length. These assessments affect everything from housing assignments to medical care to match selections that can determine survival prospects. Gladiators are valued like racehorses, Marcus explains while reviewing financial records that track his career earnings and expenses. Initial purchase or recruitment costs, training investments, equipment expenses, and medical care create asset values that must be recovered through arena performances. Fighters who generate revenue exceeding their costs receive better treatment, while those who fail to justify investment face assignment to high-mortality matches designed to recover costs through spectacular deaths. The business model creates incentives for gladiator success while establishing systems that systematically eliminate fighters who lack the skills, luck, or entertainment value necessary to generate profits. The financial pressures affect individual survival prospects while maintaining entertainment quality for audiences who demand spectacular performances regardless of human costs. Your increased value following arena victory provides access to economic opportunities previously unavailable to untested fighters, including private exhibition bookings, endorsement arrangements with equipment manufacturers, and consulting work with wealthy Romans interested in gladiator training techniques. These opportunities offer additional income while requiring time and energy that might otherwise be devoted to combat preparation. But the economic advantages also create obligations and expectations that can interfere with survival priorities. Successful gladiators face pressure to maintain public personas that satisfy fan expectations while managing business relationships that require social skills completely different from combat abilities. Gaius Brutus shares information about gladiator revolt attempts that periodically disrupt Ludus operations while providing cautionary examples of what happens to fighters who challenge the system that controls their lives. The most famous revolt, led by Spartacus several decades earlier, demonstrated both the potential for organized resistance and the inevitable consequences of failure. Escape attempts occur regularly, Gaius explains, while checking for guards who might overhear conversations about forbidden topics. Individual breakouts fail because gladiators lack resources and connections necessary for life outside the arena system. Group revolts fail because they require trust and coordination among men trained to kill each other for entertainment. The system is designed to prevent cooperation while encouraging competition that makes organized resistance nearly impossible. The revolt preparations require careful planning that balances security concerns against the need for sufficient participants to overcome ludus defenses and administrative resistance. Successful revolts must coordinate simultaneous actions across multiple facilities while managing information security that prevents administrative discovery before operations begin. But revolt attempts face nearly insurmountable obstacles, including constant surveillance, restricted access to weapons and resources, geographic isolation of training facilities, and the reality that successful gladiators have more to lose through rebellion than through continued compliance with system requirements. These factors make meaningful resistance extremely difficult while ensuring severe consequences for failed attempts. The punishment system for revolt participants includes torture, execution, and increased restrictions on surviving gladiators who weren't directly involved, but whose loyalty becomes suspect following organized resistance attempts. The collective punishment creates incentives for gladiators to report suspicious activity while discouraging participation in future revolt planning. Your exposure to revolt discussions reveals the psychological conflicts that affect all gladiators caught between survival instincts that favor compliance and human dignity that demands resistance to systematic exploitation and dehumanization. These conflicts create mental health problems that affect combat performance while contributing to the psychological breakdown that ends many gladiator careers. Spartacus describes the informal networks that connect gladiators across different training facilities, creating communication systems that allow information sharing about opponents, administrative policies, and survival strategies. These networks provide mutual support while creating security risks that could expose participants to administrative punishment. The information networks operate through complex protocols designed to maintain security while enabling coordination that benefits network participants. Gladiators develop codes, signals, and communication methods that allow sensitive information sharing without creating evidence that administrators could use for prosecution. But network participation requires trust relationships that conflict with competitive dynamics that pit gladiators against each other for survival and advancement opportunities. The resulting psychological tensions affect individual decision-making while creating vulnerabilities that hostile administrators or rival gladiators could exploit for tactical advantage. Your integration into these networks provides access to survival information while creating obligations that could conflict with individual survival priorities if network activities attract administrative attention or involve risks that exceed potential benefits. The participation decisions require careful evaluation of costs and benefits under circumstances where miscalculation could be fatal. The evening meal in your upgraded quarters includes food quality that reflects your improved status while remaining far below what wealthy Romans consider acceptable nutrition. The improved rations include more meat, fresher vegetables, and wine that hasn't been diluted beyond recognition, demonstrating how gladiator hierarchy affects even basic survival requirements. But the meal conversations reveal that improved living conditions don't eliminate awareness of mortality risks that continue threatening all gladiators regardless of their success or status within Ludus society. Veteran fighters understand that survival depends on continued arena performance rather than past achievements, making every future match a potential career-ending event. The psychological pressure of maintaining successful performance while managing fan expectations, economic opportunities, and social relationships create stress levels that affect mental health and combat effectiveness. Successful gladiators often develop coping mechanisms that include alcohol abuse, emotional detachment, and risk-taking behaviors that provide temporary relief while creating additional problems. Your first week in upgraded quarters concludes with sobering realization that arena victory improved your circumstances while confirming that gladiator life operates according to principles that treat human beings as entertainment resources whose value depends entirely on their ability to kill opponents while satisfying audience expectations for spectacular violence. The social hierarchy, economic systems, and personal relationships within gladiator society all reflect broader Roman attitudes that consider systematic violence acceptable entertainment while treating the performers as expendable assets whose deaths serve legitimate business purposes. Understanding these realities becomes essential for navigating gladiator life while maintaining psychological stability and combat effectiveness. But the most disturbing aspect of gladiator culture involves the recognition that success within the system requires accepting moral compromises that fundamentally alter participants' humanity and self-respect. Survival depends on killing opponents, entertaining crowds through violence, and maintaining relationships based on mutual exploitation rather than genuine respect or affection. Tomorrow will bring continued training for future arena assignments that become increasingly dangerous as opponents improve and crowd expectations escalate for spectacular performances. Your survival will depend on maintaining combat skills while managing social relationships, economic opportunities, and psychological pressures that affect all aspects of gladiator existence. The Ludus hierarchy provides structure and incentives for success, while ensuring that no gladiator achieves genuine security or autonomy within system designed to produce entertaining deaths for mass consumption. Your improved status represents progress within constraints rather than meaningful freedom from circumstances that continue threatening your survival and human dignity. Welcome to the complex social world of gladiator life, where survival requires navigating relationships and systems designed to exploit human desperation for public entertainment while maintaining the psychological resilience necessary to kill opponents who share identical circumstances and motivations for staying alive. Your third week as a proven gladiator ends with an announcement that will define the remainder of your very short life. Emperor Titus has decided to conclude the Colosseum's inaugural games with a spectacular finale featuring 100 gladiators fighting simultaneously in a battle royale designed to demonstrate Roman power through unprecedented mass slaughter for public entertainment. The announcement comes during the evening meal when Ludus administrators gather all remaining gladiators to explain their upcoming participation in what they euphemistically call a grand spectacle of martial excellence. The careful language cannot disguise the reality that you've been selected for systematic execution disguised as sporting entertainment, with survival odds calculated at roughly 5% for the strongest fighters and 0% for everyone else. But here's something that would shock modern audiences about Roman entertainment. Mass gladiator slaughter events weren't considered unusually brutal by contemporary standards. Roman society had become so desensitized to violence through generations of systematic killing for amusement that events designed to murder dozens of trained fighters were viewed as impressive demonstrations of imperial generosity rather than horrific atrocities requiring moral condemnation. The Battle Royale format represents the logical conclusion of gladiator entertainment evolution, escalating from individual combat matches to group battles to organized massacres, where entertainment value derives from the scale of killing rather than individual skill demonstration. The format satisfies audience bloodlust while eliminating large numbers of expensive gladiators whose maintenance costs exceed their entertainment revenue potential. Your reaction to the death sentence announcement includes psychological responses that range from desperate denial to philosophical acceptance, reflecting the mental adaptation mechanisms that help condemned men process information about their approaching execution. The psychological stages mirror what happens to soldiers facing hopeless battles, except that your death will serve no strategic purpose beyond crowd amusement. The other gladiators respond with varying degrees of panic, resignation, and desperate planning for escape attempts that everyone understands are doomed to failure. The mass death sentence creates solidarity among men who normally compete for survival, but the cooperation comes too late to prevent the systematic slaughter that administrative planning makes inevitable. Gaius Brutus, your veteran roommate who survived 8 previous arena matches, receives the news with the stoic acceptance that comes from understanding that gladiator careers always end in death, regardless of individual success or survival skills. His philosophical response provides guidance for psychological preparation, while acknowledging that no amount of mental conditioning can make systematic murder acceptable or meaningful. Every gladiator knows this day would come, Gaius explains while methodically sharpening his gladius for the final time. We've been living on borrowed time since the day we signed our contracts or were dragged into the system. The only difference is that now we know exactly when and how we'll die, which is more certainty than most people get about their final moments. Marcus Aurelius, whose upper-class background provided education in philosophy and literature, attempts to find meaning in approaching death through intellectual frameworks that transform execution into heroic sacrifice or noble tragedy. His efforts demonstrate how educated Romans reconciled systematic violence with cultural values that supposedly emphasized virtue and human dignity. Will be remembered as part of the greatest gladiator spectacle in Roman history, Marcus argues, while knowing that individual identities will disappear into historical records that focus on event magnitude rather than personal stories. Our deaths will demonstrate Roman power and imperial magnificence to audiences who will tell stories about this day for generations. But Spartacus, whose survival depended on understanding crowd psychology, provides more realistic assessment of how the mass slaughter will be remembered and what significance their deaths will have for Roman society. His analysis reveals the actual purpose behind the mass execution disguised as entertainment. Nobody will remember our names or care about our individual stories, Spartacus states, while preparing equipment for battle that's designed to end in death rather than victory. We're just numbers in an imperial ledger, expenses being eliminated through spectacular public execution that demonstrates what happens to people who become inconvenient for Roman entertainment systems. The 3 days of preparation for mass execution include intensive combat training that focuses on survival tactics for outnumbered fighting rather than individual combat techniques. The training acknowledges that normal gladiator skills become irrelevant when facing multiple opponents simultaneously while wearing equipment designed more for appearance than protection. Your combat preparation includes learning to fight defensively while conserving energy for extended battle duration, developing awareness of multiple opponent positioning and movement patterns, and practicing techniques for disabling rather than killing opponents who might become temporary allies during moments when cooperation provides mutual survival advantages. But the training also includes accepting psychological reality that survival depends more on luck than skill when facing impossible odds designed to ensure entertaining deaths rather than competitive combat outcomes. The preparation balances tactical instruction with emotional conditioning for approaching execution. The weapons and armor provided for the mass battle reflect entertainment priorities over fighter safety, with equipment selected for visual impact and crowd appeal rather than practical combat effectiveness. Your armor includes decorative elements that restrict movement while providing minimal protection against weapons designed to penetrate defensive gear efficiently. The gladius assigned for final combat shows evidence of deliberate dulling that will make clean kills more difficult while extending combat duration and increasing entertainment value through prolonged suffering. The weapon modifications demonstrate how systematically the mass execution has been planned to maximize crowd satisfaction through extended spectacle. Your shield bears decorative painting that identifies you as part of the entertainment rather than a warrior fighting for survival or strategic objectives. The artistic elements transform combat equipment into stage props while emphasizing that participants are performers rather than combatants deserving respect or consideration for their skills and courage. The night before mass execution includes final conversations with fellow gladiators who share knowledge, regrets, and final messages for families they'll never see again. The conversations reveal individual histories and motivations that led desperate or unlucky men into gladiator service while providing emotional closure for lives that will end in meaningless violence. Gaius Brutus shares stories about his family's farm that debt collectors seized before his gladiator recruitment, explaining how economic circumstances beyond individual control created situations where arena combat represented the best available option for survival and potential advancement. His background demonstrates how Roman economic systems channeled human desperation into entertainment resources. Marcus Aurelius describes his voluntary entry into gladiator service as misguided attempt to achieve fame and fortune through arena success, acknowledging that privileged background provided no preparation for combat realities or understanding of mortality risks involved in professional violence. His experience illustrates how Roman culture romanticized gladiator careers while concealing systematic exploitation. Spartacus explains his recruitment through military service gone wrong, where desertion charges led to gladiator assignment as alternative to execution or slavery. His pathway demonstrates how Roman legal systems used gladiator service as punishment while maintaining fiction that arena combat provided opportunities for redemption and advancement. The personal stories reveal common themes of economic desperation, limited alternatives, and systematic pressures that created gladiator recruitment pipelines while maintaining illusions about career opportunities and survival prospects. Individual circumstances varied, but systemic factors consistently channeled vulnerable people into entertainment roles designed to end in death. Your own reflection on the pathway that led from debt court to approaching mass execution includes recognition that every decision seemed reasonable given available alternatives, while the cumulative effect created circumstances where survival depended on systematic killing for crowd amusement. The progression demonstrates how individual rational choices can lead to collectively irrational outcomes. The final morning begins with pre-combat rituals that emphasize entertainment spectacle over religious significance or warrior traditions. The ceremonies serve crowd expectations rather than participant needs, transforming final moments into performance elements that prioritize audience satisfaction over human dignity or spiritual preparation. Your entrance into the Colosseum for mass execution occurs through mechanical lifts that coordinate timing for maximum dramatic impact, while ensuring that all 100 participants appear simultaneously for crowd inspection and betting assessment. The theatrical staging transforms systematic murder into entertainment production. The arena floor has been modified with obstacles, elevation changes, and hazards designed to channel combat into visually interesting patterns while preventing defensive formations that might reduce casualty rates or extend battle duration beyond optimal entertainment timeframes. Every environmental element serves entertainment priorities over fighter survival. The crowd response to 100 gladiators appearing simultaneously exceeds anything you experience during individual combat, creating acoustic assault that interferes with communication and tactical coordination, while adding psychological pressure that affects combat performance under already impossible circumstances. Emperor Titus addresses the crowd and gladiators with speech that portrays mass execution as demonstration of imperial generosity and Roman military superiority, transforming systematic murder into patriotic celebration while ignoring human costs involved in entertainment production. The rhetoric reveals how political power justifies systematic violence through cultural narratives. The imperial signal to begin mass combat launches organized chaos where survival depends entirely on luck, while individual skill becomes irrelevant under circumstances designed to ensure rapid casualty rates and spectacular visual effects for audience entertainment. Combat begins with immediate mortality as weaker fighters fall within seconds. Your survival through initial combat phases occurs through defensive positioning and tactical awareness developed during training, but extended battle reveals how quickly organized fighting deteriorates into desperate individual struggles, where cooperation becomes impossible and death approaches through accumulated injuries and exhaustion. The arena sand becomes increasingly treacherous as blood accumulation creates unstable footing, while corpses and wounded fighters create obstacles that interfere with movement and tactical positioning. Combat conditions deteriorate rapidly as environmental factors compound tactical disadvantages created by overwhelming numerical odds. Fellow gladiators who survived initial combat phases begin falling around you as superior numbers and systematic targeting eliminate isolated fighters while demonstrating how predetermined entertainment outcomes override individual combat ability or survival determination. Death becomes inevitable regardless of skill or tactical decisions. Your own near-fatal injury occurs when coordinated attacks from multiple opponents penetrate defensive positioning and create deep wounds that affect combat effectiveness while threatening immediate death through blood loss. Survival depends on finding temporary defensive position while managing injuries that would end normal combat immediately. The crowd's reaction to mass casualties escalates their excitement while providing running commentary about entertainment value derived from systematic killing. Their enthusiasm demonstrates how Roman society transformed human death into acceptable amusement while ignoring moral implications of systematic murder for entertainment purposes. Individual deaths around you include men whose skills and experience exceeded your own, demonstrating how mass execution format eliminates combat advantages that provided survival benefits during individual matches. Superior fighters die meaninglessly alongside newcomers while serving identical entertainment purposes. The psychological impact of witnessing systematic slaughter includes recognition that gladiator training, combat experience, and survival skills mean nothing when facing circumstances designed to ensure death, regardless of individual capabilities or determination. Personal agency becomes irrelevant under conditions created for entertainment rather than fair combat. Your final combat exchanges occur while managing serious injuries and complete exhaustion against opponents facing identical circumstances, creating desperate violence that lacks tactical sophistication while providing crowd entertainment through dramatic suffering and death struggles. Combat effectiveness becomes irrelevant as death approaches through accumulated damage. The battle's conclusion approaches as survivor numbers drop below levels necessary for continued entertainment, leaving a handful of wounded fighters whose deaths will provide climactic finale for crowd satisfaction. Survival this long represents luck rather than skill, while confirming that death remains inevitable regardless of temporary success. Your final moments as combatant capable of meaningful resistance occur when blood loss and exhaustion reduce effectiveness below minimum levels necessary for survival against opponents facing similar circumstances. Combat becomes matter of determination rather than ability, while death approaches through physical collapse rather than decisive defeat. The crowd's final celebration of mass execution demonstrates how Roman entertainment culture transformed systematic murder into acceptable public spectacle while ignoring human costs involved in entertainment production. Their satisfaction confirms that gladiator deaths serve entertainment purposes rather than meaningful objectives. Your survival of mass gladiator slaughter occurs through combination of defensive tactics, luck, and physical collapse that removes you from active combat before sustaining fatal injuries. Survival represents statistical anomaly rather than combat success, while leaving you among fewer than 5 fighters who avoid immediate death. But survival of mass execution doesn't represent victory or escape from gladiator system that continues controlling your fate. Wounded survivors face uncertain futures that include potential recovery and return to arena combat or permanent disability that reduces their value as entertainment investments while providing no security or freedom. Your legacy as gladiator who survived impossible odds becomes part of entertainment mythology that romanticizes systematic violence while ignoring the human costs and moral implications involved in transforming desperate people into performers whose deaths serve no purpose beyond crowd amusement and political demonstration. The Colosseum's inaugural games conclude with casualty statistics that exceed most military campaigns while serving no strategic purpose beyond entertainment and imperial prestige. The 100-day festival consumed thousands of human and animal lives while demonstrating how wealthy societies can systematize violence for mass consumption when cultural values prioritize entertainment over human dignity. Your story ends not with heroic victory or meaningful death, but with survival of systematic murder designed for public entertainment in society that considered such spectacles acceptable cultural expressions. Whether you live or die, your experience demonstrates how civilizations can create systems that transform human desperation into organized violence for mass amusement, while maintaining illusions about cultural sophistication and moral superiority. Welcome to the reality of Roman entertainment, where individual human lives matter less than crowd satisfaction and where systematic violence becomes acceptable when packaged as cultural spectacle and political demonstration. Your survival or death changes nothing about systems designed to perpetuate such entertainment regardless of human costs involved.